Welcome to Empowered by Illness, a podcast about living with genetic disorders, episode 10. Welcome, Veronica.
Hello.
I hope you're doing well today. So, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and give us your formal title.
Okay, my name is Veronica Ferra, and I am a benefit specialist for an insurance broker.
Okay, benefit specialist. So, let's go into that a little more. Do people have to request a benefit specialist when it comes to insurance? Or,
So I work for an insurance brokerage who pairs insurance companies with employers. So you don't have to request a benefit specialist, at least not through my brokerage. One comes with every account. And the way that I like to explain that to clients is I talk to the insurance company so you don't have to. So if you're running into a frustrating issue with the insurance company, you would reach out to me and I would act on your behalf after signing a private health information request for me to discuss anything that you need with the insurance company. It's there to save you time, it's there to save you frustration, and it's there to save what you may not know about insurance because that's my specialty.
so the similarities between you and, say, a case manager are about the same, right?
A case manager would go more in depth,
Okay.
and a case manager would be on the side of the insurance company, and a case manager is usually an RN.
That is good to know.
Yep.
So if, let's say, someone doesn't have private insurance through, say, their employer, or purchasing private insurance through a broker, then they could get a case manager.
They, if they do not have private insurance, if they have no insurance, they would not be able to get a case manager through an insurance company. However, hospital systems have case managers that can be assigned to people in certain cases. Not everyone qualifies for a case manager through like a hospital system. That's usually going to be for cancer cases and really complex, like heart and kidney disorders, because there just isn't the manpower to do one for every single person. However, someone with a complex genetic disorder or a complex medical history can try to make a case for a case manager. Um, my son was seen, I'm not going to go into his diagnosis, but my son was seen at the Mayo Clinic, and we had a case manager that helped us through the process up there.
See, that's really good to know because, like, with my son and me and my daughter, um, ours is complicated. And nobody ever told me I could get a case manager through the hospital. Now, with that being said, when we had marketplace insurance,
Mhm.
I was able to get case managers for them. And I'm not going to say what company I used, but even when you're purchasing through marketplace or not a broker, you can still find a way to get a case manager if you have insurance. I think even
Correct.
Medicaid has case managers as
They
well,
do. They do.
and Medicare.
They
So
do.
I don't think a lot of people are informed of that, and it can be immensely helpful. Well, thank you for all that information because
Of course.
I did not know about the hospital case manager thing. I think I might be giving some people some calls next week. Um, what is something people should know about insurance that is not well known?
So there are subsidies available in most states. Oklahoma is a state that has subsidies available. So you can either go through the marketplace to um, get subsidies, or if your employer is partnered with the state for subsidies, you can apply for subsidies through that as well. It's usually uh, Oklahoma has Sooner Care, which is our version of Medicaid. And so Sooner Care is for everyone below a certain income threshold. And then there's a median income threshold that qualifies for something called Insure Oklahoma. And you would have to see if your employer is A, small enough to qualify for Insure Oklahoma, or B, participating with Insure Oklahoma, because Insure Oklahoma is only for companies with 250 or fewer employers. So that would be that type of subsidy, which helps both the employer and the employees. But if you go through the marketplace, you can also qualify. I don't know the exact thresholds for subsidies for uh, private group insurance. However, companies over 250 employees, I think it's actually over 50 employees. I'm not entirely sure of the guideline on that. They have to meet federal guidelines for how much they can charge you, and it's a percentage of your income through that company. So that should be supplied to every employer. It's a compliance notice that tells you this is how much you're paying, this is how it fits that, but that's for larger employers. So for people with smaller employers or employers who do not give them access to healthcare, there are subsidies available in most states.
That is really good to know. I know that my husband, his company is smaller, but they recently got better health insurance. But I don't know if Texas has that in between. That I mean, I'm sure it does. It has to. I would
The,
assume.
the best thing to do would be to go to your state's insurance marketplace. Ours is Insure Oklahoma and Sooner Care, and see if there are subsidies for the above Medicaid guidelines. Like I said, most states have implemented it. I don't know what it's called in every state because I
Right,
only deal with insurance in Oklahoma. So,
right. And that was something I needed to bring up. Veronica is strictly from Oklahoma,
yes,
and I am in Texas. So
yes.
it does vary by state. I do want everyone to be aware of that. But you can always go online and put subsidy for, Texas insurance or Pennsylvania insurance or whatever needs to be put in for your specific state, because most of the stuff that we're discussing is United States wide.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we can't go any further than the US, because I don't know the laws and how that works outside, even in Canada. But
Neither
for
do I.
now, we're just going to speak about the US and the states that we're in and what we're familiar with. I just wanted everyone to be aware of that. I know that you and I discussed a lot of people don't know the difference between out of pocket and your deductible.
Okay. So there are a couple of different insurance plans. So a lot of people are on a deductible plan, which means the most common deductible in the United States right now, I think, is about $1,200. So that means that you pay toward the deductible 100% before insurance kicks in their portion. And the deductible usually does not apply to like office visit copays and pharmacy copays. So those don't go towards your deductible, but that would be for things like any treatments that you need, any procedures that you need. So let's say you have to go in for shoulder surgery. If you have not met your deductible, they are first going to charge you the entirety of the deductible, $1,200, and then they are going to charge you your portion of the co-insurance, which is anywhere from 50 to 10%. And then they will tack on 10% of the remaining, and they will explain that that is your cost. Out of pocket comes into play, and it's usually a multiple of the deductible. It's usually 2 or 3 times the deductible for higher level plans, and 3 to 4 times the deductible. There is a maximum allowable amount. I don't know that off the top of my head, but that is the maximum amount of money that you will pay per year, and my family has met our out of pocket maximum every year for the last 12 years. So that means that I pick a Cadillac plan because my family has high needs. So I picked the one with the lowest out-of-pocket maximum. This year, my out-of-pocket maximum is $6,000. So that means that I will pay no more than $6,000 for my family. And we're about halfway there, which this is the longest amount of time that we have not met our deductible. So we're having a good year, or not met our out-of-pocket. So we're having a good year. We usually meet our deductible in like January or February. So
Right.
this year it took us until April to meet our deductible. Um, so once you get into those, into a deductible type plan, that is what you will end up paying. There are other plans called high deductible health plans, and those are for people who maybe don't use their insurance as much. They're not
Yeah.
expecting to have a lot of things, and those deductibles will be $6,000 or $7,000, and
A
that means
person.
you're paying every single penny towards your healthcare until you meet that. But usually the out of pocket cost is either the same as the deductible or is double the deductible. So you may end up saving money because you're saving on premiums. So if
Right.
you're someone who doesn't need a lot, and I'm assuming that anyone listening to a genetic disorders podcast is probably going to be in the same boat as me, where we meet our deductible, we meet our out of pocket. And the
As well as
ACA
me.
has given us a lot of protections because unfortunately we were the type of people who would go bankrupt from medical care because there were no maximums. There were no this is as much as you take. And the way that insurance does that is they mitigate the risk by spreading that over multiple people. So that's in small groups, it's community rated, which means it's across the entire uh, series of zip codes. So the rates are kind of geographically linked. For large companies, it's going to be based on claims experience and it's going to be rated across all the employees. And that's for employees with 50 or more employees. For individual health plans, that's again going to be a community rating experience where it takes into account what your age typically costs the company and what your geographic profile typically costs the company. Unfortunately, in areas like Texas and Oklahoma, we have higher health risks because of lifestyle. Just generally, we are generally unhealthier than coastal areas and stuff like that, just because there's less access to care, there's less access to um, exercise in a way, I guess, less access to lifestyle things, either because of the weather or the heat or
Or the fact that we're
anything like
mostly
that.
rural. Yeah. Don't
Exactly,
listen to the way I just
exactly.
said rural.
Yeah.
Rural. There we go. Because
Yeah.
mostly, I mean, unless you live in a bigger city, it's different. And then you have more access to exercise and better foods and things like that. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um,
Well, we have a lot of food deserts here, even in the metro areas of Oklahoma, um,
Oklahoma's a
where
small
the
state.
closest grocery store is 5 miles away. So somebody who's walking, who doesn't have access to a vehicle can't get there. Whereas, areas with high walkability, you don't need a car, like in places like Central Oregon and Washington State and New York and some parts of Central Florida and stuff like that. Like you don't have to go quite as far. So because we're more sprawled out and we have fewer people per regional area, that definitely does affect that. And that's a whole other podcast, but
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're not going to go that far. So I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're aware, like premium assistance. So there are different companies for different genetic disorders. And I'm just going to throw this out there. This doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Veronica, but I'm throwing it out there. So certain companies help with premium assistance. And I want everyone to be aware of that. So if you have a specified genetic disorder, like we have Fabry disease, there are several companies, including the one that prescribes us our certain prescription called Galafold. They help with premium assistance or get us in contact with people who help us with premium assistance. So if there's ever a time where somebody who's listening to this feels like they can't pay their premium and they have to choose between buying groceries or getting their medication, please go online. Look up your disorder and type in assistance. And I guarantee you will find something. Excuse me.
A good reference for that is the National Organization of Rare Disorders, NORD.org. They also have assistance for a lot of orphan diseases. And a lot of health insurance companies specifically have management for orphan diseases, especially pharmacy benefit managers. They will look into the best way to help manage for the benefit of the pharmacy and the benefit of the company that they're helping to manage, but
Yes.
also it ends up benefiting the patient as well. I am on a biologic medication, an injectable biologic medication that has copay assistance. So through rebates to the company and rebates to me, instead of paying my maximum cost through my insurance is $300 per injection. And instead of that, I pay $45 per injection. So that saves me $255 a month.
That's
So,
amazing. So yeah, it's a similar situation with me. So Amicus Assist is the name of the company that helps with my Fabry as well as my son. And if they did not help with our copay, it would be $20,000 a pack.
yep.
And I'm sorry, but that's not even possible. I don't know anybody who would be able to, provide that. So I really want everyone to know that all of that assistance is there. Please utilize it. It's there to help you. And
And if you have commercial health insurance, if you have group health insurance, the first step would be to call your broker's office and talk to your benefit specialist because we probably know what programs are out there. There's a couple of programs that are not broker specific, they're not insurance specific, that are really, really valuable. GoodRx is one that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. Make sure that you're checking your generics. However, if you're on generic medications for like your daily needs, because a lot of genetic disorders cause issues with thyroid, like me, and cause issues that you need to take either a blood pressure medication or something like that. Those medications have been around for 50 years. There's usually a generic available. The cost plus, trying to remember, it's the Mark Cuban drug program. It's costplus.com, I think.
okay,
They ship medication to you for cost plus 3%. So one of my medications is a generic medication that is $15 through my health insurance, which that $15 goes towards my max out of pocket. However, it's $3 through the Mark Cuban Cost Plus drug program. So it's taking me 5 months to make 1 month worth of copay. And yeah, I can't apply it to my out of pocket. However, my ex-husband was on a medication that was $85 a month through the copay, and we were getting it for $12 a month. So I'd much rather pay the
that's
$12 a month than
nice.
have the $85 a month go toward my maximum out of pocket. Because
Absolutely.
for my family, we're going to meet the maximum out of pocket anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Regardless, it's going to
exactly.
happen.
Yeah.
So recently, well, I say recently, about now it's been almost a year. I had an issue with the insurance company. My son could no longer do his infusions. He had I don't even know what we're going to call it. It was something rare that happened. He had been having an infusion for over a year, and he had a really rare reaction to one day. So they found out he could no longer do the infusions and had to be put on Galafold, which is what I'm on.
Mhm.
It's a chaperone drug. Because what we have is a lysosomal storage disorder. So the chaperone drug basically makes our body grow that and use it
Mhm.
our own body, as opposed to infusions, which automatically just put it in for you. And that's just how we're going to put it without being too complicated because you can't just go anyway.
Yeah.
Uh, so when we applied to the insurance, because he was not 16 and it was not FDA approved in the United States, now they've done testing in Europe on kids that were 12 and it was working, but we kept getting denied. So it took them 5 months to finally approve him. And it took a miracle. This gentleman from the insurance company through the pharmacy department contacted me and said, I see all of this paperwork and I see this is the only treatment for him possible. So I'm going to do my best, but I can't make any promises. So my question to you is, what could I have done or gotten doctors to do in order to help get approval for something like that, something that's life threatening and necessary?
So, what you are getting is something called a medical exception. Um, and I don't know that there would have been a way to push it through any faster than 5 months. It's a very long process. Are you on company insurance?
So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's my husband's company
Okay.
insurance. But
Um,
previous,
so
okay, so we
they,
were on Marketplace
okay,
when we started the process.
okay,
And then his company purchased insurance and it got switched. So that wasn't helpful.
right.
That's
That's not
another
helpful.
reason it took so
So
long.
what you were doing is something called uh an an exception. So I actually don't know if Marketplace will do exceptions. So it might have helped you that you got on your husband's insurance
Good
because
to
the
know.
company has to agree to make that exception. My recommendation to anyone going through something similar is to call, if you're on company insurance, call the broker's office, get them all the documentation, have them help you push that through. Um, because I have worked on medical exceptions for a couple of different drugs for clients that we have gotten pushed through. It's still like a 2 to 3 month long process. It still takes a lot of documentation. And then what I'm going to tell you to do is to call your insurance company and make sure that they put it through as a lifetime exception because usually those exceptions are only for 12 months.
Oh my
So
gosh, I'm so glad you said
so
that.
you need to
I need
call
to
and make
check
sure that
that.
they put it through as a lifetime exception.
Oh, I'm
Otherwise,
so
you're
glad you
going,
you said
when
that.
the year resets, um, it's going to cause a problem. Like, and typically, we do exceptions like that for patients who have to have drugs dispenses written and the generic is offered and they force you onto the generic. But for people,
Yeah,
especially for zebras, the ingredients list matters, and
absolutely.
sometimes we cannot tolerate a certain form of the drug, a certain manufacturer of the drug. So that would be an exception process. And always make sure if you're going through an exception process that you request a lifetime exception because it will fall off at the end of 12 months generally.
Okay. I'm really glad you said that because nobody has told me if that's a, we don't know. So I'm really glad you said that. I'm actually going
Yeah.
to write that down.
Excuse me.
So, another question, a lot of us zebras have to use mobility aids. And do you have any advice on how to possibly get certain mobility aids approved through insurance? I mean, I know you're a broker and all that stuff, and it might
Okay,
vary.
so there's a couple different ways that you can get your mobility aids. You can use a flexible spending account if you have that. Or you can have your doctor write you a prescription and go to a durable medical equipment pharmacy, and that'll come out of your prescription benefit. So, I have needed a cane, I have needed a walker, I have needed a wheelchair. I bought my own cane because I wanted something cute. I had access to a walker. And then when I needed a wheelchair, we went ahead and purchased one through a durable medical equipment pharmacy, and that goes towards your out-of-pocket max, and it's usually a percentage of cost share with the insurance company. But if you have your provider write you prescriptions, they can write you prescriptions for braces, they can write you prescriptions for mobility equipment. I had a thumb brace made for me through my insurance company for my subluxation of my right thumb, and I'm right-handed, and so it was a custom made device that cost $500, and I think I paid $25 as my share of it. So let your doctors know what's going on, let them know what your limitations are. Don't be ashamed to use a mobility device. I know there's so much stigma with it, but it's
Definitely.
so much better to protect yourself and use a mobility device than it is to just try and tough it out. It makes a world of difference. It saves
Absolutely.
your energy, it saves your spoons, it allows you to be more yourself. So
Yep, that's what I'm trying to get my 15-year-old to understand.
it's hard.
It's
Yeah,
it's hard for an adult.
yeah,
So
yeah,
to be a teenager and have to use a cane,
yeah.
she's done really well though. I have to give her props. Like 2 weeks ago, she took it into the store, and I was like,
Good for her.
"Yeah, no." I was like, "I'm so proud
That's
of
a good one.
you."
Yeah.
What do most people misunderstand about what you do?
I think they
And
think that I'm on the side of the insurance company and I am on the side of the client. My responsibility is to the client. My job is to work for the client for the benefit of them. I'm not an extension of the insurance company. My job is to get the best results for the client and not the insurance company.
absolutely. I'm glad you said that because when you work for a broker, it's not the insurance company you're helping. You
Mm-mm.
are helping the client
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Now we're going to go into what are your medical diagnoses?
Okay, so embarrassingly, I had to look these up because I have so many over such a long period of time that I forget things that I have.
No, it's fine.
So
I get brain
yeah,
fog and I forget.
I'll be at a doctor's office and I'll be like, oh yeah, I have
There's
that too.
this. Let's add this too.
Um, so I have asthma, I have anxiety, depressive mood disorder, I have hereditary hemochromatosis. That's one of my genetic disorders. That means that my body can't filter out iron. I had before my hysterectomy polycystic ovarian syndrome, chronic rhinitis, allergic rhinitis, panic disorder, food allergies, vocal cord dysfunction, um, AVNRT, which is atrioventricular nodal reentrant tachycardia. My body was born with an extra node in my heart, and so it would continue pumping blood to my heart and not to my brain. And so I had multiple episodes of passing out until we found out what it was. And I was diagnosed at 32. And typically that's something that gets diagnosed in childhood. I have Ehlers-Danlos, POTS, and mast cell activation syndrome. I have the trifecta.
Mhm.
I have esophagitis dissecans, which is an allergic erosion of the esophagus that puts me at higher risk for esophageal cancer, but thankfully nothing has happened with that. I have prothrombin gene uh, marker, which means that my blood is more prone to clotting, so I'm more prone to uh, clots in my lungs and clots in my legs and clots in that sense. I'm currently being evaluated for systemic mastocytosis, which requires a bone marrow biopsy. So that's a progression of mast cell activation syndrome. Not everyone who has mast cell activation syndrome has mastocytosis, but everyone who has mastocytosis has mast cell activation syndrome. Basically means that is my body overproducing the mast cells or is my body just more excitable to the mast cells? Um, I have uh, chronic kidney issues. I had gastroesophageal gastroesophageal reflux disease. I had a Nissen fundoplication last year, which has completely changed my life. Um, and that is about it. It's a
That is
lot.
about it. Like that's all.
Yeah,
Not a
it's a
lot
lot.
there.
Yeah.
No.
So
So there's a
I
lot.
have chronic pain.
Oh yeah. We'll throw
And
that in there.
until last year, so June of last year, I got treatment for my mast cell activation syndrome. And one of the symptoms that I have for my mast cell activation syndrome is extreme bone pain. So if anybody has had bone pain, I can tell you it's debilitating. It's awful. It just feels like the worst ache anytime you move, anytime you put pressure, like standing or anything like that. So uh, I started my treatment, and on day 3, I woke up with no pain. And I thought that people who experienced a 0 out of 10 pain were a myth. I thought they were a unicorn. I was like, there's no way that people are walking around with no pain. And so most days I have a 0 out of 10 pain, and my flares are about a 4 or 5 out of 10, which
I love
is
it.
insane to me. Like, I never believed I could get here. I never believed it was possible. But I worked with, I fired my doctors who were gaslighting me, and I worked with a doctor who finally believed me. And we got answers, and we got a diagnosis. And this was after I had diagnoses of POTS and Ehlers-Danlos and hemochromatosis. I legitimately had a physician look at me and say, "You have so many rare things. There's no way there's another rare thing wrong with you." Well, he was wrong. So, and technically,
Oh
these
my.
conditions are called the trifecta because they're comorbidities of each other. So
Exactly.
they are very frequently found together.
Yes.
But as a woman, and as a woman who was overweight at the time due to my mobility issues, I was told to lose weight and get on more antidepressants, neither of which helped, by the way.
No, because that's not where it stems from. So
Yeah.
can't fix something if it doesn't come from that. um, what has been the hardest part about your diagnoses while working in the medical field? I know that once you got this treatment, I'm sure it was like obviously it's changed your life, but previous to that, what was the hardest part about doing both?
I actually left my job to go to a broker's office. So I worked for 20 years in dentistry and then transitioned to a career in neurology, working in the hospital. And these were 12-hour days, very physically demanding, a lot of walking. I was starting to have issues and not really getting a lot of support. I also really didn't ask for a lot of support just because it felt like we're the well ones. We're better. We're feeling better than everyone who's in the hospital. And I'm kind of like, but I don't really feel better than everyone who's in the hospital. I kind of feel this bad too. So I started looking for a job where I could use my 20 years of experience in healthcare to continue to help people. So I started looking for patient advocate type jobs, and this position came up, a benefit specialist came up, and I interviewed and I learned about what the position was, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. And I actually really have a really strong background that can help me. And so I was extremely forthcoming with my potential bosses at the insurance brokerage. I was like, I am sick. I am very sick. I am going to 2 or 3 doctor's appointments a week right now. I'm not getting the time off that I need from work. And I need to know that I can work and figure out what's going on. And it took 8 months of me working there to get a diagnosis. And this was like constant going to appointments, getting tests. And um, I found out what was wrong with me, started feeling better, but I still wasn't well. I didn't get well until after my surgery in November. That was really the thing that like kickstarted everything because I was able to eat again. and I was having multiple episodes of choking before I had the surgery, and we were trying to put it off until January this year. But in 2023, I had emergency surgery in January on my shoulder. I had MCAS reaction to procedure. I had 3 episodes of anaphylaxis. I was in ICU for 3 days over Mem Memorial Day of 2023. I spent my 40th birthday in the hospital, not being able to breathe. So I really didn't start getting well and doing better until after my surgery. And now I'm hiking most weekends. I went on my first bike ride in 6 years yesterday and went about 5 miles. So I'm doing so much better physically, emotionally, mentally, all the things. Um, and I pushed really hard. I fired a lot of doctors. Um, and the person who actually diagnosed me is a nurse practitioner. And I would say to anybody who's getting a lot of pushback from MDs, MDs are trained in one body system. Nurse practitioners are looking at a whole body approach. So sometimes they can help you get to an answer. I see a lot of specialists. I see a GI specialist. I see a hematology oncologist for my hemochromatosis. I see a GYN specialist for all my issues. I see a cardiologist for all my cardiac issues. I see a nephrologist for my kidney issues. And all of them are like, yeah, we have this one problem, but it doesn't really explain all the things. And so when every body system is involved, you need to start looking at it every body system disorder.
That's
And
right.
nurse practitioners have those on their radar more, in my experience, have those on their radar more than the MDs that I've experienced have.
I would have to
I
agree
think,
with you on that.
yeah, I think
They look at
physicians
it
are
as a whole,
great.
yes, as opposed to going, oh, well, and you want somebody to take those pieces, those doctors, and they're like, well, that's not my area. Okay.
Mhm.
But you know that I have this plethora of doctors. Why are you not talking to each other? And I've noticed that nurse practitioners do tend to communicate better and they do look at a whole body system and they do, well, at least from my experience, like you said with your experience, they do look at you or look at everyone different because every body is different. And I think a lot of MDs
I
tend to
remember,
forget that.
I remember going in, I remember going into her office and I was, I felt so dejected and I was just crying in her office. I was like, I am tired of being sick. I can't walk to the end of my driveway. I don't know what's wrong with me. And she's like, we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure this out. And she started with some blood tests that had not been run before. She started with some imaging that had not been done before. She directed my specialist to do testing that had not been done before. And in those tests and in those blood tests, we found out what was wrong with me. And it took about 3 months of working with her to get everything figured out. But she was the first person who's like, I don't want to see any of your old tests. I want to run everything new. I want to start from the beginning. And there was one blood test that had been elevated since childhood. And they were like, well, that's just your body. Your body just elevates that blood test. And I was like, it's an inflammatory marker, by the way. And I was like, that
Interesting.
cannot be normal. It cannot be normal for me to be 500 times normal and not, and it be okay.
Yeah,
And for the first time in February of this year, that blood test was normal for the first time in my life. So it wasn't just that's the way my body is.
yeah,
Yeah, my body
exactly.
was that way because
Yeah,
it was sick. So if you do not have someone who can advocate for you, you need to advocate for yourself. You
absolutely.
know how you feel every day. Nobody
Exactly
can
right.
tell you that that's normal if it's painful and debilitating and keeping you from doing things that you love. I pushed through pain for years. I just assumed that that's how it was,
And that's how
and
everybody
I
lives.
just that's how everybody lives, and
Hmm.
it's just normal. It's not.
It's not.
And if you don't have if you don't feel like you can advocate for yourself, find a friend to go with you.
Yes.
Find someone who is a partner, a friend, a spouse, someone who's willing to say this is not okay. And the reason that they kept treating me as depressive is because I would get off work, I would go to sleep, and I would wake up 2 days later. I would sleep for 2 days. Um, and that's not normal. It's not normal. And I was like, I want to be awake. I want to do things. I physically
Exactly.
cannot get up.
Yeah.
So, and
And
at a certain point, if you're throwing antidepressants at someone and nothing is getting better, then you need to start listening to the hoof baits and thinking zebra, because so many of us are sicker longer than we need to be. It took truly, in terms of my worst period of illness, it took 6 years of me being so sick. Nobody listened until I was so sick that I couldn't walk.
I've been
And
there.
I was approaching that.
I've been there. And um they told me it was in my head.
Mhm.
I went through 9 different neurologists in my whole thing. And that's the
Functional
biggest
neurological
thing.
disorder.
Um it goes back to my Fabry disease, so it can cause
But did they
neurological
diagnose
issues.
you with functional neurological disorder?
No, I still
Oh.
haven't been diagnosed.
Hmm.
So I was having dystonian symptoms like
Hmm.
MS,
Hmm.
and I didn't know what they were, so I called them seizures. And they still don't know what they are. They just gave me a generalized seizure disorder. Nobody's figured it out. Yeah, so I'm still there, but at least I'm on a medication that's worked.
Yes,
So I haven't had episodes since 2022, which is
that's
amazing.
awesome.
But it
Yeah.
also took me 6 years to get my diagnosis for Fabry, and there was only one doctor who would listen to me the whole way. He
Hmm.
ran every test. He heard me, and that's what you've got to find is at least that one
Yeah.
doctor who is going to go, I'm going to fight for you
Hmm.
because there is something wrong. This isn't
Yeah.
normal. People don't live like this, and that's
Yeah.
what he was doing. He never not once said, I don't believe you, it's in your head. He would just go, okay, on to the next test. Okay, on to the next test. And if he didn't know, he sent me to somebody who did, and
Hmm.
that was the best part. So I understand fully where you're coming from on that. What is one piece of advice you would give to people who battle in the same similar situation? Which I think we just went through that. But
I
if you
also
want
would
to elaborate,
I highly, highly recommend joining support groups for your specific disorders or suspected disorders, because people have already been through the gamut of testing, and it's really helpful to learn the lingo of the disorder that you have or the disorder that you're suspected to have, because you might be with a practitioner who doesn't know what to test you for, doesn't have experience with your specific disorder, especially on orphan diseases. So join a support group for that, so that you can find out what specific testing led people to their definitive diagnoses,
yes,
so that you can try to, and I'm not saying join everything, but work with your medical team to find out what is specifically on your radar. I personally had mast cell activation syndrome put on my radar by a friend of mine who's a nurse. She's like, you need to be tested for this. And sure enough, that's what it was. Um, so getting into a community, if you have a disorder like Ehlers-Danlos, like Fabry disease, that have a lot of comorbidities, join an online support group, join a community that is international, because a lot of what they're doing in Europe is in its infancy here, which you've experienced with your child
Absolutely.
being on medication under the
Absolutely.
age of 16. So join, ask questions, learn as much as you can, because unfortunately, you're going to have a PhD in your own disorder if you have an orphan disease. That
Absolutely.
absolutely is going to, you have to know what you're talking about.
Hmm.
And
And even when you
it's
do, they'll still look at you like you're crazy, but you know what you're talking about. And then you go find
exactly.
another doctor who understands what you're talking about.
And a lot of times I will premise with my doctors, I'm really smart. I'm really well read. I have a degree that supports research. I have done the research. Tell me why this couldn't be. And every time that I've premised it with that, let's go ahead and test it.
Hmm.
And
Wish I had a degree to back mine up.
that's actually why I went back to school. Not even kidding. I went back to school to get my degree so that I would stop being looked at like I didn't know what I was talking about.
Right. I just stand
But
there until they
I
look
had to do that for myself.
at me. What is an example of you helping someone in your position that has similar medical issues?
So
If you can
without breaking HIPAA,
yeah, I
um,
don't want you to give any names or anything. Just an example of something that you when you were
um,
done, you were like, wow, I'm glad I could do that.
there is a person in my life who um, had a disorder that I recognized. I started going with her to her appointments and requested specific testing for her. Um, it was confirmed. She has been on treatment for that now. Um, she had a physician basically incorrectly um, work on her. And I was like, I am not okay with this. I need to get you to a center of excellence, because the doctor was going to go in and redo the procedure that had already not been done correctly. I was like, you need to be at Mayo Clinic. You need to be at a center of excellence. You need someone
Right.
who knows what they're doing to repeat this test. You need a second opinion. Um, got her into Mayo Clinic in 10 days and got the um, issue resolved in 30 days. And she is back to work and back to life. And that's been almost 2 years now. I'm super proud that I pushed when she couldn't. And I think as zebras, we recognize so many things because we've been through it, that it's kind of our job um,
I
to
agree
help
a
people
million percent.
But I will always push. I have scribed for multiple friends who are just overwhelmed. I'm like, put me on FaceTime at the doctor's office. Put me on FaceTime and I'll take notes, and then I'll report back, because they're so overwhelmed. They don't know what to do. They don't understand the information being told to them. Not everyone has a pre-medical degree. Not everyone has a degree in biology. Not everyone understands what it is. They just understand that they don't feel well and they don't know what's going on. So I have done that multiple times for many friends, is just take notes for them, because when you sit down with a doctor who is spending time with you and who is doing the right thing and who is talking to you for 2 hours, that's a lot of information.
Oh,
That's a lot.
absolutely.
That's a lot. And it's unfair that there's not really an option available. But even if you don't have someone who has a background like that, have someone go and take notes for you. Have
Absolutely.
someone go, don't go alone. have someone go who can take notes and ask questions, because you're only going to hear a third of what is being told to you, and they're going to listen because it doesn't directly affect them, and they're going to be able to think more clearly and ask more questions and think of things. I'm a huge proponent of taking your cell phone,
Right.
which is not showing up because of my background, and uh, opening your notes anytime you have something weird, type it in and leave a running list of stuff that you have going on. You're like, huh, that was weird. Like,
Right.
I felt palpitations in my chest today. That was weird.
Right.
And then take it to your doctor as a diary of symptoms and be like, hey, this happened. Does this mean anything? Hey, this happened. Do we need to look into it further? And if you're someone who suffers with a chronic illness, you just you need to be seen monthly by your physician. You just need to be touching base, even if you feel well. You need to be touching base and making sure that you're all on the same page.
Yes. I see mine every 3 months, but that works for us because
Yeah.
right now I'm maintained. But
Yeah, I would say once you get to a maintenance spot, that's
yes,
definitely, and I'm not talking specialist. I'm talking like your primary care. Like, hey,
yes.
just
Yeah, I see them all.
make sure you're keeping on. For me it's monthly still. I'm only a year into treatment, so and I'm doing so much better, but I'm not at a state of weird things aren't happening. Like, I'm still having flares, I'm still going through stuff. So for me, monthly makes the most sense.
Right.
But if you have insurance, plan that into your day, plan that into your treatment budget for whatever your copay is, go monthly and just try to. I know I speak from a huge sense of privilege that I can afford to do that. Um, but I hope that that's something that people can afford to and are doing.
Absolutely. And I know that like with me, I have my GI doctor has I don't know what they call them exactly, but it's basically who calls me once a month and does
Hmm.
check-ins. And I wish that all doctors' office, I mean, I know the smaller ones, that's not possible, but like the big corporate ones, I wish they had somebody to do that. Because if all of my doctors did that, when something happens, because my body is unpredictable and things do just happen, it would be
Mhm.
helpful to have somebody like that on all my specialists.
Right.
And but I just think it's amazing. I love it when they call me and we can discuss things. And then when I get off the phone, I go, okay, that's weird. This was really bad this month. You
Mhm.
kind of start thinking about it too.
Yeah.
Um, what are three unique skills that helped you become successful in your industry in correlation with your diagnoses?
In relation to my diagnoses,
Yes.
um, let's see.
And we've already discussed some of them. The
Yeah,
fact that you have medical degrees is a huge unique skill.
pre medical degree. I have my pre med. My degree is in
See?
biology with a minor in microbiology and mathematics. So
Oh, that's all.
it's an amalgamation of nerd stuff. So that helps me quite a bit. My uh, Having gone through things gives me a huge sense of empathy and um, willingness to. I Some of my coworkers affectionately call me a bulldog. I will not rest until it's done, because I know how important it is to you, because I've been there. I've walked that. I've done that. I've done the not knowing. Um, I utilize every resource I can, stuff that I know about due to my diagnoses, like you were saying, the premium assistance. I've looked into things for uh, clients with diabetes. I've looked into different things that they could be potentially uh, helped by. And one of the things that I actually distributed company wide is, I don't know how it works in Texas, but here in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, EMSA is not a part of your water bill, so you could get slapped with like a $10,000 ambulance fee. And I have had to take an ambulance multiple times, unfortunately. Um, and I pay a $5 fee on my water bill, so it doesn't cost me anything.
What?
Yeah, so
I don't know of anything
you
like that.
might look into EMSA care in your
I think I'm
area.
gonna look into that. You're gonna have to
That is a
message me
very
that.
important thing to
Like
have.
spell it out and send it to me. Just message me
Yeah.
that.
Like I don't know how
Yes.
it is in Texas, but in Oklahoma, it's called EMSA Care, and it's $4.95 charge on your water bill. And that way, when you take an ambulance, the city pays the fee. So it
Wow.
it's one of those distributing risk. So the most most people who have it on their bill are not going to need it, but for those of the population who do need it, it's covered by that 495 a month
I could have
that
used that
gets
last
rolled into
year
your
and the
water
year
bill.
before, and like I could have used that for a very long time now.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look into that. I'm so glad you said that.
So
What's the
that's something that was directly related to my disorder because I had already put it on my water bill. I was like, yeah, that seems like an important thing. And then it happened to me and
for
I was like,
sure?
oh, that was worth $10,000. That one
Absolutely.
time that I put 495 and I paid for it for the 7 years that we lived in that house and it was 100% worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the most important lesson you learned in your career and personal life to date when it comes to all this?
You know your body better than anyone else. You know what you are capable of more than anyone else. And I am fortunate enough to have a boss who saw something in me and hired me when I was at my absolute sickest and not able to fulfill how much I can fulfill now. And, he took a chance on me being sick. And I was as transparent as I could be. I was like, hey, I'm sick. I'm, I work really hard. And now that I'm well, he's like, you are unstoppable. He's like, I can't believe how much you were doing while you were sick. And now that you're well, you're just completely unstoppable. So it's probably the biggest lesson is listen. If you need to make a change to get yourself well, make the change. Doesn't matter what it is, if it's a personal change, if it's a career change, whatever it is, make it because you're worth it.
I love it. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, especially the listen to your body thing. You know it better than anybody else, no matter what anybody tells you. It's you. You know what you feel.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I think this was amazing. It's super long, but you know what? It's super informative too.
Yeah.
So until next time, everyone, be good to yourself as well as each other. Previous to our interview, Veronica confided in me that her right side, where her jawline and neck meet, was swollen. She said this is not an uncommon occurrence and this has happened multiple times previously, and she would attempt to tough it out. Which, if you are a chronic illness warrior, you understand that we do this often. Much to her dismay, and much to her attempts to prevent her from going to the ER, she ended up going and she was there for 9 hours to treat her lingual tonsillitis with airway effacement. It was an MCAS reaction. I say this to be 100% transparent when it comes to my podcast and letting everyone understand that although we look as if nothing is wrong, there are plenty of things under the surface, and we do fight to survive. On another note, I noticed in the recording that I was doing something odd with my eyes. It looked like I was rolling my eyes multiple times, when I was listening to Veronica speak. So now I will be speaking to my neurologist about said issue to make sure it's nothing serious that I could possibly have problems with in the future, that it doesn't have anything to do with my generalized seizure disorders. I just wanted everyone to know that life does go on after a podcast and how we have to bounce back and learn how to survive in this. Once again, it goes back to knowing your body and understanding what's next and what you should do to take care of your body. Thank you so much for listening. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe for all new information and new interviews that hopefully I will be doing in the future. Please be easy on me. This was my first interview.